He's the man who bled from his eye as Bond's most chilling nemesis in Casino Royale and redefined Hannibal Lecter with elegance and terror on television. Yet while peers like Michael Fassbender and Benedict Cumberbatch ascended to Hollywood's inner circle, Mikkelsen's path has remained curiously off-center. How can an actor with his intensity, range, and international acclaim still be seen as a cult favorite rather than an A-list giant? This is Underrated Actors, the Mads Mikkelsen story, the breakout that should have changed everything. When Mads Mikkelsen walked into the world's view in Casino Royale, 2006, it looked like the beginning of an unstoppable rise. As Le Chiffre, the cold and calculating banker whose bleeding eye became instantly iconic, he delivered a performance that critics and audiences alike hailed as one of the most compelling villains in Bond history. In the suffocating quiet of poker tables and the brutal intimacy of torture scenes, Mikkelsen proved he could dominate the screen with nothing more than silence and presence. He wasn't simply sparring with Daniel Craig's Bond. He was bending the narrative around himself, drawing attention in every frame. And yet, for all its success, the role did not transform his career the way it had for others. Javier Bardem's Skyfall villain earned him awards season momentum and solidified his status as one of the industry's titans. Christoph Waltz parlayed his turn in Spectre into another high-profile showcase that kept him in the Hollywood spotlight. Mikkelsen, by contrast, returned to Europe, his Bond triumph treated by Hollywood less as a launchpad than as an anomaly. This is the essence of what makes him an underrated actor. He achieved everything an actor could in a Bond film: menace, charisma, critical acclaim, cultural imprint, and yet the industry did not elevate him to the next tier. Instead of headlining major franchises or leading prestige dramas, he was sidelined, typecast, or overlooked. The success was undeniable, but the recognition was incomplete. Le Chiffre should have been the role that made Mads Mikkelsen unavoidable. Instead, it became the first sign that even triumph would not protect him from Hollywood's blind spots. When Mads Mikkelsen walked into the world's view in Casino Royale, 2006, it seemed like the moment that would define the rest of his career. As Le Chiffre, the cold, calculating banker whose bleeding eye became instantly iconic, he delivered far more than a standard Bond villain. In the suffocating stillness of poker tables and the unnerving brutality of torture scenes, Mikkelsen proved that he could seize control of a blockbuster with nothing more than silence, a stare, and a razor's edge of vulnerability. He wasn't simply playing opposite Daniel Craig's Bond. He was shaping the film around himself, forcing Bond to find his identity in the shadow of this antagonist. Critics hailed him as one of the franchise's most memorable villains, and audiences left the theater with his image burned into memory. By every traditional measure, it should have been a coronation, a role in one of cinema's most enduring franchises. A performance that critics praised for its elegance and menace. A villain whose name entered the Bond canon alongside the greats. For most actors, this is where everything changes. To Hollywood, he was the European heavy, exotic enough to menace, sophisticated enough to scheme, but never the face to build a franchise around. While his contemporaries were elevated to leading men in billion-dollar films or prestige dramas, Mikkelsen was quietly ushered back into the periphery, offered roles that reinforced the stereotype rather than shattered it. The irony was brutal. The very qualities that set him apart, his restraint, his elegance, his ability to terrify with a whisper instead of a shout, were dismissed as limitations rather than gifts. In interviews after Casino Royale, Mikkelsen himself admitted that the film did not catapult him into the Hollywood spotlight the way many expected. Instead of waiting for studios to recognize his worth, he returned to Denmark, investing himself in deeply human stories where nuance mattered more than box office numbers. It was a choice rooted in integrity, but one that came at a cost. While others capitalized on the Bond halo effect, Mikkelsen's international momentum seemed to dissipate. He was respected, yes. Admired by critics, absolutely. But the machinery that crowns stars did not anoint him. This is the paradox of Mads Mikkelsen as an underrated actor. He proved in one of the world's biggest franchises that he could steal the spotlight from James Bond himself. And yet, instead of ascending to the heights of a Fassbender, a Bardem, or a Cumberbatch, he was relegated to the margins, a cult figure rather than a mainstream icon. What should have been the turning point of his career instead became the first chapter in a larger story. The story of an actor whose brilliance has always outpaced the recognition given to him. Hannibal, the role that proved his genius. If one role should have erased all doubt about Mads Mikkelsen's place among the greats, it was Hannibal, 2013 to 2015. To step into the shoes of Hannibal Lecter, a character already immortalized by Anthony Hopkins, was to accept an almost impossible challenge. Hopkins had won an Academy Award and left a performance so indelible that for 2 decades, the name Hannibal Lecter conjured his face alone. For most actors, it would have been a career-ending comparison. For Mikkelsen, it became the moment he defined himself. He didn't mimic Hopkins, he dismantled expectations and rebuilt Lecter from the ground up. His version was elegant, restrained, and terrifying precisely because of his quiet dignity. Mikkelsen's Hannibal was not a monster lurking in the shadows, but a cultivated aesthete hiding in plain sight, seducing the world with charm while masking unfathomable violence. Critics and audiences alike were spellbound. Week after week, his magnetic stillness turned a network crime show into something resembling an operatic psychological drama. And yet, despite universal acclaim, the industry did not reward him the way it rewarded others. Bryan Cranston, Breaking Bad, transformed television brilliance into a shelf full of Emmys and a launchpad into Hollywood prestige roles. Matthew McConaughey, True Detective, rode his season of brooding genius into the so-called McConaissance, culminating in an Oscar. Even Benedict Cumberbatch, Sherlock, parlayed his cult following into Marvel stardom and awards season mainstays. But Mikkelsen? He became, once again, a cult treasure rather than a mainstream giant. Despite proving that he could carry a complex, morally ambiguous anti-hero on his back, Hollywood still treated him as a supporting figure, a villain to decorate blockbusters like Doctor Strange or Rogue One, a Star Wars story, rather than the leading man those performances proved him to be. His Hannibal should have been his coronation. Instead, it reinforced his paradox, adored by critics, worshipped by fans, but consistently left outside the Hollywood A-list. In interviews, Mikkelsen later admitted he knew Hannibal had made him a figure of obsession among a certain audience, but he also recognized that it didn't open the doors it should have. He had done what few thought possible: reinvent one of cinema's most iconic characters and arguably outshine his predecessor. Yet instead of following the trajectory of Cranston, McConaughey, or Cumberbatch, he was quietly pushed back into the industry's margins, labeled once again as the European actor who makes a great villain. That is the essence of what makes Mads Mikkelsen one of the most underrated actors of his time. At a moment when he should have ascended to the top tier, he was left lingering on the periphery, his genius recognized but not rewarded, his artistry admired but not granted the platform it deserved. Hannibal should have made him unavoidable. Instead, it exposed the uncomfortable truth. Hollywood doesn't always crown the best, and Mikkelsen, for all his brilliance, remains proof of that injustice. The indie triumphs nobody talked about. If there is a single film that should have obliterated any doubt about Mads Mikkelsen's range, it is The Hunt, 2012. As Lucas, a small-town kindergarten teacher falsely accused of child abuse, Mikkelsen gave a performance that was shattering in its humanity. His eyes carried the weight of a man watching his life collapse under suspicion. His silences screamed louder than dialogue. The role earned him the Best Actor prize at the Cannes Film Festival, one of the most prestigious honors in world cinema. In another era, this would have been the defining breakthrough. Leonardo DiCaprio turned The Revenant into his coronation moment, an endurance-driven performance that Hollywood could not ignore. Joaquin Phoenix's Joker captured the cultural zeitgeist and made him the face of awards season. By contrast, The Hunt remained trapped within the boundaries of European art house, celebrated passionately by critics and festival-goers, but largely invisible to mainstream audiences. Hollywood did not rally around Mikkelsen's achievement. It let it drift quietly past. This was not an isolated case. That same year, Mikkelsen appeared in A Royal Affair, 2012, playing Johann Friedrich Struensee, the German physician whose affair with the Queen of Denmark sparked both scandal and reform. The performance displayed his ability to embody passion, intellect, and vulnerability within a single role, anchoring a historical drama that earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Foreign Language Film. Yet again, while actors like Colin Firth, The King's Speech, or Eddie Redmayne, The Theory of Everything, parlayed similar prestige dramas into Oscars and Hollywood prestige, Mikkelsen's triumph was largely confined to European recognition. Years later, Another Round, 2020, once again placed Mikkelsen at the center of international acclaim. As Martin, a middle-aged teacher who experiments with maintaining a constant level of alcohol in his bloodstream, he offered one of the most layered, heartbreaking, and ultimately life-affirming performances of his career. The film went on to win the Oscar for Best International Feature, and critics hailed Mikkelsen's final drunken dance as one of the most unforgettable cinematic moments of the decade. Yet even with this global spotlight, Hollywood did not elevate him to the same platform as Gary Oldman, Darkest Hour, or Anthony Hopkins, The Father, whose late career performances were met with awards glory and career resurgence. Time and again, Mikkelsen delivered work that, in another actor's hands, would have rewritten careers. He collected trophies at Cannes and European festivals, but never the award season campaigns, the Hollywood push, or the global branding that catapults a performer into the A-list. His artistry was undeniable, but his achievements were consistently minimized, framed as foreign treasures rather than universal milestones. And this is the essence of why Mikkelsen belongs in any conversation about underrated actors. He did the work. He gave the performances. He reached the artistic peaks. But where Hollywood rolled out the red carpet for DiCaprio, Phoenix, Firth, and Oldman, it left Mikkelsen standing at the door, admired, respected, but never crowned. Typecasting in Hollywood's blind spots. Mikkelsen's problem was never a lack of talent. It was Hollywood's lack of imagination. No matter how often he proved his versatility, the industry continued to see him through a narrow lens, the European villain. And nowhere was that more obvious than in his two biggest Hollywood blockbusters of 2016, Doctor Strange and Rogue One, a Star Wars story. In Doctor Strange, 2016, Mads Mikkelsen was given the role of Caecilius, a fallen disciple of the Ancient One, lured into the promises of the dark dimension. On paper, it looked like a defining role, a man whose lust for immortality was rooted in grief and betrayal, a character who might have rivaled the emotional depth of Marvel's best antagonists. And yet, on screen, Caecilius became little more than another obstacle for the hero's rise, a visually impressive villain designed to showcase Doctor Strange's transformation rather than to exist as a fully realized character. Still, Mikkelsen refused to treat the role as disposable. He delivered Caecilius with the same precision and gravitas he brings to his European dramas, elevating dialogue that might have otherwise fallen flat. His piercing gaze and physical stillness gave the sorcerer a dangerous weight, and even in limited scenes, he imbued Caecilius with the flicker of humanity beneath the menace, the trace of a grieving man who believed he had been wronged. In interviews, Mikkelsen admitted he knew the character was written to serve the hero's arc more than his own, but he insisted on grounding Caecilius with a sense of tragic conviction rather than pure malice. The contrast was glaring. Benedict Cumberbatch, his co-star and fellow European actor, was handed the keys to the Marvel Kingdom, a central role in billion-dollar crossovers, a permanent place in the studio's long-term plans. Mikkelsen, despite proving he could carry the gravitas of a Marvel villain with elegance and restraint, was discarded after a single film. This is the recurring wound of his career. While others are elevated to the A-list on the back of similar opportunities, Mikkelsen is too often left in the shadows, praised for his performance but never rewarded with momentum. It is precisely here that the label underrated stings the most. Because Caecilius was not just a villain, he was proof that Mikkelsen could bring dimension to even the flattest material. Yet instead of using that performance as a springboard, Hollywood reduced him to a one-off antagonist. He was memorable, magnetic, but ultimately replaceable in the eyes of the system. For an actor of his caliber, this wasn't merely underuse, it was misrecognition. Another moment when the machinery of Hollywood failed to see the giant standing in front of them. The same year, Mads Mikkelsen stepped into another iconic universe with Rogue One, a Star Wars story, 2016. This time, he was not cast as a villain, but as Galen Erso, the brilliant scientist coerced into designing the Death Star, the weapon that would define an empire's reign of terror. It was a rare opportunity for Hollywood to let Mikkelsen inhabit a character built not on menace, but on moral conflict and quiet tragedy. His Galen was a man torn between survival and complicity, a father who carried unbearable guilt, yet still clung to hope for redemption. Though his screen time was limited, Mikkelsen transformed what could have been a mere plot device into the emotional backbone of the film. His farewell to his daughter Jin became the story's most human moment, a tender, devastating exchange that elevated the stakes of the rebellion from political to deeply personal. Reviewers at The Guardian and Variety noted how his brief presence carried unexpected emotional resonance, while The Hollywood Reporter praised his to turn exposition-heavy dialogue into something intimate and heartbreaking. Even Mikkelsen himself admitted in interviews that he was surprised at how powerful the father-daughter storyline became for audiences, acknowledging that playing Galen allowed him to bring nuance into a universe often dominated by archetypes. And yet, as with so many of his Hollywood ventures, the recognition stopped short. While actors like Adam Driver, introduced in the same trilogy as Kylo Ren, were vaulted into household name status and awards consideration, Mikkelsen's work was framed as secondary. Memorable, yes, but ultimately peripheral. He was praised for adding dignity and gravitas, but not positioned as a central figure in the franchise's legacy. This, again, is the cruel pattern of an underrated actor. Even when Mikkelsen delivers moments that critics single out as among the film's most affecting, the machinery of Hollywood does not elevate him. Instead, his contribution is treated as supplemental, a flourish of depth before the spotlight shifts back to others. Galen Erso should have been his chance to claim a lasting foothold in one of cinema's most powerful franchises. Instead, it became another reminder that in Hollywood, Mikkelsen is too often valued for what he adds, but not rewarded with what he deserves. But even beyond Marvel and Star Wars, the pattern persisted. In Clash of the Titans, 2010, Mikkelsen played Draco, the hardened warrior who trains Perseus for battle. It was a physically demanding, noble role, one that allowed him to showcase leadership, courage, and humanity rather than villainy. And yet, when audiences left the theater, it was Sam Worthington's name on the poster and Liam Neeson's booming voice as Zeus that dominated conversation. Mikkelsen's contribution, though crucial, was overshadowed. In a film where he should have emerged as a breakout hero, he was relegated to supporting soldier. Years later, in Arctic, 2018, Mikkelsen delivered perhaps one of the most grueling performances of his career. Alone on the ice, with almost no dialogue, he carried the entire film on his shoulders. His face, his body language, his breath in the freezing air told the story of survival more powerfully than words could. Critics praised it as a masterclass in minimalist acting, comparing his work to Tom Hanks in Cast Away. And yet, while Hanks turned his survival epic into awards buzz and cultural ubiquity, Mikkelsen's Arctic remained a festival darling, admired in small circles but never given the industry-wide recognition it deserved. His stoic intensity, his quiet menace, his ability to radiate both danger and fragility, these should have made him one of Hollywood's most sought-after leads. Instead, they became excuses for typecasting. Casting directors saw his restraint not as range, but as limitation. Studios treated his European gravitas as shorthand for villain, a convenient archetype rather than an invitation to explore the full scale of his artistry. And this is where the label underrated cuts deepest. While contemporaries like Michael Fassbender and Benedict Cumberbatch leveraged similar skills into marquee careers, Mikkelsen was consistently sidelined. Hollywood had in its hands an actor capable of redefining blockbusters with subtlety and humanity, and yet it chose to relegate him to supporting shadows. He wasn't just underused, he was underestimated. Why he's still underrated. For all the critical acclaim, all the festival trophies, and all the unforgettable performances, Mads Mikkelsen has never been granted the Hollywood status his peers enjoy. The reason is not talent. That much is indisputable. The reason lies in the way Mikkelsen has chosen to navigate his career, and in the way Hollywood insists on rewarding visibility over artistry. Unlike so many of his contemporaries, Mikkelsen has never played the fame game. He avoids scandal, shrugs at gossip, and rarely allows his private life to be turned into tabloid fodder. In interviews, he often jokes that he finds Hollywood's obsession with stardom strange, admitting that he doesn't care for red carpet maneuvering or chasing headlines. Where others strategically chase Oscar roles, Mikkelsen has consistently chosen projects that fascinate him artistically, whether or not they carry awards season buzz. This refusal to bend to the machinery of fame is admirable, but it has also kept him, unfairly, on the margins. Yet when one looks at the scope of his work, the injustice becomes stark. He has shown he can be mythic, playing Galen Erso in Rogue One, a Star Wars story grounding a space opera with moral conflict and paternal love. He can be monstrous, redefining Hannibal Lecter into something elegant, seductive, and horrifying all at once. He can be achingly human, as in Another Round, where his portrayal of midlife despair and fragile hope earned universal praise. Few actors of his generation can traverse this spectrum so convincingly. And still, he remains underrated. Consider his contemporaries. Benedict Cumberbatch leveraged Sherlock into Marvel superstardom and a constant presence in awards races. Michael Fassbender parlayed his intensity into leading roles across blockbusters and prestige dramas, from X-Men to 12 Years a Slave. Even Viggo Mortensen, whose magnetism mirrors Mikkelsen's, was catapulted into the Hollywood pantheon thanks to The Lord of the Rings. Mikkelsen, by contrast, despite matching or surpassing these actors in range and depth, has been persistently underutilized, consistently positioned as a supporting figure rather than the centerpiece. Part of the paradox lies in his presence. Mikkelsen carries himself with the kind of natural gravitas that recalls Daniel Day-Lewis, an aura of seriousness that can make him seem intimidating to casting directors who prefer bankable charm. He possesses the unpredictability of Javier Bardem, the sense that he might detonate on screen at any moment, but without the industry push that turned Bardem into an Oscar staple. He has the raw magnetism of Viggo Mortensen, but without the billion-dollar franchise that cemented Mortensen's place in cinematic history. This is the cruel irony of Mikkelsen's career. The very qualities that should have secured him a permanent seat at Hollywood's top table, his restraint, his intensity, his ability to disappear into roles rather than into celebrity, are the same reasons he has been overlooked. He is proof of how Hollywood often mistakes subtlety for limitation and integrity for invisibility. Mikkelsen is not forgotten. He is not unrecognized. But he is chronically underrated. A master of his craft who, in a just system, would be mentioned in the same breath as Day-Lewis, Bardem, and Mortensen, rather than lingering as a cult favorite on the industry's sidelines. Legacy in progress. Mads Mikkelsen's story is not a tale of failure, but of profound misrecognition. He is not the actor who never made it. He is the actor who made it everywhere except in the one arena that insists on branding someone as an A-lister. In Europe, he is revered as Denmark's greatest cinematic export, a figure who brings depth to every role, whether art house or blockbuster. Critics whisper his name with reverence, cinephiles evangelize about his performances, and directors consistently praise his ability to elevate material. And yet in Hollywood, he is too often undervalued. Appreciated, yes, but rarely celebrated in proportion to his gifts. This strange duality is what makes him feel so vital even now. Unlike many A-list actors who have been flattened by overexposure, Mikkelsen retains an aura of unpredictability. Each time he appears on screen, there is an element of discovery. He does not coast on persona, does not recycle familiar tricks. Instead, he approaches every character as though it were his first, layering restraint with sudden bursts of vulnerability. It is this devotion to craft and his refusal to become a celebrity brand that keeps him underrated, and paradoxically, keeps him essential. The irony is cruel but undeniable. The very reasons Mikkelsen has not been fully embraced by Hollywood's machinery are the reasons he has built such an enduring legacy. By refusing to bend himself into the shape studios demand, he has preserved his authenticity. By choosing roles for their complexity rather than their awards prospects, he has built a body of work that resonates long after the credits roll. From the raw humanity of The Hunt, to the operatic horror of Hannibal, to the aching vulnerability of Another Round, his career is a tapestry of performances that prove depth does not require stardom. Compare him to his contemporaries. Many of the actors elevated to Hollywood's top tier, whether Benedict Cumberbatch, Michael Fassbender, or even Joaquin Phoenix, have had their careers shaped by carefully orchestrated campaigns, awards strategies, or billion-dollar franchises. Mikkelsen, by contrast, has resisted that machinery, and as a result, his recognition has never matched his artistry. He is underrated not because he lacks impact, but because he refuses to play by the rules of visibility. And maybe that is the enduring paradox of Mads Mikkelsen. To be underrated in his case is not to be overlooked, but to be underestimated by the very system that should celebrate him most. His legacy is still unfolding, and perhaps it is all the stronger because it has never been dependent on Hollywood's validation. He remains an actor who surprises, unsettles, and commands attention, not with the glitter of fame, but with the gravity of truth. In the end, Mikkelsen's story forces us to confront what it means to be underrated. Is it a flaw in the actor, or a flaw in the industry that fails to recognize greatness unless it conforms to its own formulas? For Mads Mikkelsen, the answer is clear. His career is living proof that some of the finest performances of our time can exist outside the glow of mainstream recognition. And that is precisely why, long after Hollywood has crowned and discarded its A-listers, Mikkelsen's work will remain, quietly, defiantly, enduringly underrated. Mads Mikkelsen has given us villains, heroes, and haunted souls, each role proof of a talent that deserves far more than the industry has offered him. He is celebrated by critics, cherished by fans, but still treated by Hollywood as if he were on the margins. That is the paradox of being one of the greatest underrated actors of our time. Which Mikkelsen role left the strongest mark on you? Tell us in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, remember to like and subscribe for more untold journeys of cinema's most underrated legends.